Now, last night on MSNBC, I don't know if you saw it, but Lawrence O'Donnell had made a statement that as I sat there last night between 10 and 11 o'clock at night Eastern time and listened to this rant by Lawrence O'Donnell, it really sent chills up and down my spine. And what O'Donnell was talking about was, I think it was earlier this week, Trump made a comment about, which if you interpret the comment, you know, when you listen to Trump, what he says, he's pretty obvious, but sometimes you have to interpret it. He's talking about closing down a cable network, MSNBC, because everybody on MSNBC criticizes this rotten bastard. In my opinion, not as far as they could, but they criticize him and they expose his bullshit constantly. So the point that Lawrence O'Donnell was trying to make after Trump made that comment, and I mentioned it in the podcast either yesterday or Tuesday, after Trump made that comment, there was no outpouring of outrage by ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and what little bit of outrage there was came from MSNBC. But what Trump is talking about is what every dictator, every fascist son of a bitch dictator has to have. And that is the destruction, the elimination of an independent press and the destruction or elimination of an independent judicial system. Now, that destruction of an independent judicial system is what Netanyahu tried to do in Israel before this horrendous attack by Hamas. All of a sudden, that has disappeared, and I guess rightly so, since Israel is now in a full-scale war. But Trump wants to destroy and eliminate the entire judicial system in this country and replace the judges in that judicial system. Oh, he wouldn't eliminate it. He would just replace the judges who would be favorable to anything that he did. And he wants to eliminate entirely an independent press. These are the two things that a dictator, a filthy, rotten dictator, a fascist cannot abide. Independent judiciary, independent press. So, just to kind of reiterate, for years now, the orange bastard has considered the media in this country to be his enemy. Not just his enemy, but he goes further and uses a term from communist fascism, and that's not a contradiction in term, from communist fascism, and that term is enemy of the people. This is the term Trump uses now to identify the independent media in this country, enemy of the people. He doesn't say that about the media outlets who will do anything he says, will praise him, will suck up to him. You know who I'm talking about. There are various cable and online and media. There aren't any over-the-air media that I know of, with the exception of certain talk radio freaks who would do anything to satisfy Donald Trump because it satisfies their own tendencies toward fascism. But Trump has used that term, enemy of the people, over and over so many times that it's as pointed out by a writer at The Hill, it's become a catchphrase for him. It's just something that trips out of his mouth whenever he wants to use it. And the people at his Nazi-style rallies who are listening to him have more or less incorporated that bullshit, so it doesn't mean anything even to them anymore. That the independent press in this country is an enemy of the people. Oh, my God. He's repeated that phrase so many times that most people, even in media, have become immune to it. When they hear it, they just dismiss it. Oh, that's just Trump raving. And this is a part that I think Lawrence O'Donnell was just very upset about last night. And so was I. listening to O'Donnell. The fact that independent media, especially broadcast media, I'm not talking about cable, Fox and MSNBC and so many of them are cable companies. And cable companies are not regulated by the FCC. Over-the-air broadcasting is. Over-the-air broadcasting, NBC, CBS, ABC. These are networks that are licensed by the federal government to do their business. But the cable companies are not monitored by the FCC. So pretty much that's the reason I can say what I say on this podcast. I can use gutter language. I can use insulting language, because my podcast goes over the internet where there is no regulation to the degree that regulation exists for over-the-air broadcasting. So it's very troubling that Trump's little catchphrase, any of the people, when he's talking about an independent press, independent media, has become so normalized. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves about how dangerous it is to have a criminal like this orange bastard who was the president of this country, even though he did not get the majority of votes. He was the president of this country. He wants to do it again. And he consistently attacks the only profession specifically mentioned in the U.S. Constitution, in the First Amendment. The press. Now, as the Hill pointed out, this orange bastard has been known to go on these unhinged rants when he gives his little Nazi-like rallies and also on his toy social media platform. Just because he does it constantly doesn't mean we should just brush it off as unhinged rants, even though that's what it sounds like. That's what it is. But as I've pointed out, as many people have pointed out now, Trump is such a childlike asshole in the worst sense. No offense to children. But he does what he says he's going to do. These unhinged rants should be taken seriously because Trump means them. Now, that brings us to what he posted on his toy social media platform Tuesday night, which is what started this. Trump wrote this, quote, MSNBC, and then in parentheses, he changes it to MSDNC, the D standing for the Democratic Party. Let me start again. MSNBC, parenthetically MSDNC, uses free government-approved airwaves, and yet is nothing but a 24-hour hit job on Donald J. Trump and the Republican Party for purposes of election interference. Brian Roberts, the chairman and CEO of MSNBC, is a slimeball who has been able to get away with these constant attacks for years. It is the world's biggest political contribution to the radical left Democrats who, by the way, are destroying our country. Our so-called government should come down hard on them and make them pay for their for their illegal political activity. Much more to come. Watch. End quote, Donald Trump. Come down hard on them? Make them pay? Watch? For what? In the first place, Trump is such an ignorant son of a bitch about everything. He's the dumbest fuck ever to be a major political figure. And he doesn't know that MSNBC is not using the free public airwaves. He can't use them. He can't use them. They're a cable company. But Trump is such an ignorant bastard. He doesn't know that, and he knows that his brain-dead cult followers don't understand that either. So he's wrong as far as MSNBC's position where it concerns broadcast in this country. But he's also wrong about Brian Roberts, who Trump mentioned. Brian Roberts is the chairman and CEO of Comcast, which owns NBC. And NBC does use public airways, but not MSNBC. And back in September, according to The Hill, Trump wrote on Truth Social, quote, "They're almost all dishonest and corrupt, but Comcast, with its one-side and vicious coverage by NBC News, and in particular MSNBC, often and correctly referred to as MSDNC, for its country-threatening treason, should be investigated," end quote. I mean, I know I'm kind of stammering and stuttering this evening, but it's because most of this shit is just so obscene to me. I mean, it is true obscenity to hear this going on from the mouth of this orange son of a bitch, this orange Jesus, as he's now being referred to by some of the Christian fascists. And to realize at the same time, as I do realize, that he may get the presidency again. And Trump added on his toy media platform back on Tuesday, he added this, quote, "Why should NBC or any other of the corrupt and dishonest media companies be entitled to use the very valuable airwaves of the USA free? They are a true threat to democracy and are, in fact, the enemy of the people. The fake news media should pay a big price for what they have done to our once great country." End quote. Listen to that shit. I mean, this is beyond fascism and squarely into Nazism.
Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.